Yes, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, is our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, here for another UNC football show. It's Pittsburgh week as the Tar Heels are preparing to travel up to the Steel City this Saturday for a matchup with the Panthers. 8 p.m. kickoff in Pittsburgh. That game will be on ACC Network. Carolina currently a 7.5-point favorite over the Panthers as things stand right now. ACC play officially starting this weekend for the Tar Heels as well. So it's just a big weekend for a lot of reasons, AJ, and Carolina looking to improve to 4-0 with a win over the Panthers. So we've got a rundown to go through as we always do in this. And before we dive into this one, I do want to say a big thank you and a big shout out to our sponsor on this podcast. That's Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We're going to talk about them a little bit later on in the show, but a big thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this one. And AJ, I feel like we got to start on the injury front. I've been getting some people on Twitter asking me about injuries. I'm sure you've probably got a bunch on the Tar Heel Illustrated Twitter, as well as our premium message boards, which you can sign up for just $8.33 a month. So let's run through some injury updates for the Tar Heels. Gavin Blackwell, upper body, will be evaluated during the week. I did see that play pretty up close and personal last week. I had it in my viewfinder. I was doing the highlights for it. Looked like it was some type of concussion or something. He got up very wobbly, just did not look comfortable. And I know Nate McCullum was calling for some people to come over and help him because he just got up very shaky and wobbly from that situation. So still being evaluated during the week. Willie Lampkin, lower body, evaluated during the week as well. I saw him get injured, not injured in warmups, but I saw him kind of walking and limping around in warmups on the field last week. Didn't look comfortable, and I wasn't surprised he didn't end up playing. Was dressed out the whole game. I believe Mac even said that he did tweak something in pregame because he said he had a good week of practice. Yeah. So
well, he got hurt in midweek in practice,
and then aggravated it again maybe before the game.
Lower leg, upper foot.
Yeah, he was limping around.
We're making jokes the other day about how they can maybe term some of these a little bit different without telling us. I think it's an ankle.
Yeah.
But he's going to be evaluated during the week, and to my knowledge, he's practicing.
And obviously that'd be a big plus to have him back against Pittsburgh. And then Lejon Cavazos also getting closer to returning, did get hurt in preseason, hasn't played this year. Believe it was a knee injury from him. Just looking at he had a brace on his knee and has had that for a few weeks now. Not 100% sure about that, but is closer and could be this weekend play, which is obviously a big plus for the secondary. The more bodies you have in there, the better.
Well,
so
yeah, and Legend has some experience. Yeah. He got hurt first week in fall camp, and he gives him a little bit of experience. Guy's been in college for a while, transferred from Ohio State, was really struggled early on last year when they put him in the game. First appearance, I think, was App State, and it was a real tough time for him. Yeah. But he actually got better during the year. And was fairly solid late in the year. So, again, he gives them another option. Now, I don't know how much of the communication he has to make up. Remember, we talked last week how Stick Lane was in the process of trying to make up for lost time. The difference is Legend was there in the spring, and Stick showed up this summer. So the refined version of Gene Chizik's defense and year two of Gene Chizik's defense gives him an advantage as far as knowing a lot of the calls and the communication. Stick is still catching up, but he played 27 snaps the other night. So that's a very, very good sign that, he's a college graduate. He's a football IQ guy. So he's picking up on it quickly. Bringing Legend back either this game, if he doesn't play this game, then they get an open date, and then Syracuse. So it's 2 more weeks to get healthy, and we'll still have the last 8 games to play. That will help them in case of attrition. If guys get tired, it'll allow for Tayon Holloway maybe to pull back and just really grind on learning the position, watching and learning, because he's got a little bit of experience under him now, but he struggled enough that they had to go to Armani Chapman last week, and having another guy like Legend out there in case you need him and they will play him some, will only make that group better. They're much, much better off in the secondary today than they were a month ago.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Let's stay on the defense, and then we'll go to offense after that, because we do have some things we want to talk about in regard to the defense. And, I think depth has been the biggest storyline for me, at least so far this year, in terms of, a big positive for this defense, because one thing we've seen over the past couple of years is just a lack of depth. We haven't really seen, this program be able to develop a rotation that they're comfortable with putting. And I think so far this year, we've really seen that, particularly in the secondary, also rotating a ton on the defensive line as well. Just go look at the snap counts. That's not something that they've been super comfortable doing in the past. And not only are they rotating, AJ, particularly, like I said, on the D-line and in the secondary, but they're getting production out of the guys that are coming in. It's not just like, hey, go play a couple of snaps so this guy can have a rest, and then you're going to play 95% of the snaps when you come back in. It's like, no, they're trusting some other people to go out there. They're putting other guys in and putting different packages in certain situations. It seems to be working so far. I think that's a huge plus. As a caveat to that, though, linebacker position still one. The depth is a little bit of I'm not going to say a concern, but something that's still a work in progress. Amari Campbell has played a little bit down there, but hasn't played a ton. So it's Cedric Gray and Power Echols that are getting a majority of those snaps. Now, they also were really good, so it's not a surprise they're playing as much as they are, and they're integral to what Carolina does defensively, not only on the field, but off the field as well in terms of leadership. But I think a big positive on this defense, just talking about depth and some of the guys they potentially could get back to with Lejon Cavazos, seems like the defensive side of the ball depth-wise is in a pretty good position right now.
Really good shape, and it's getting better at linebacker. We're in person for media stuff on Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesday mornings we do it on Zoom. So we talked to Tommy Thigpen Wednesday morning. This we're recording this Wednesday, run it probably Wednesday night. So it was this morning we talked to Tommy, and I asked him about Sebastian Cheeks, who was going to get on the field some last year as a true freshman. He was a 4-star kid out of Evanston, Illinois, in Northwestern's backyard. And then he had a tough year last year. His dad died in the spring, and then he suffered the season-ending injury early on. He played like 4 snaps, or whatever it was. So I asked Tommy where he is as far as making up for all that lost time, and he said he's there. He's kind of ready now. So we could see him in certain situations. I would think that score and time might matter, might play a factor there, but we might see some of Sebastian Cheeks this weekend. We'll see a little bit more of Amari Campbell. He played 1 5-play series this past game. Mac is telling the assistants, get your subs in the game. They got to get these guys ready in case they need them this year, but also get them ready for next year and keep starters a little bit more rested. I think one of the things that really helped Carolina Saturday when they limited Minnesota to 46 yards in their last 4 possessions was the fact that the defense was fresh. Chapman gets the interception, game flips, but you have to make it stand up. And the defense did make it stand up because they were fresh enough, and they really shut down Minnesota, and they did it in all 3 phases of the defense. So they were fresher. Now, I also asked Tommy, I said, all that being said, when you have guys like Cedric and Power out there, how hard is it to pull them off the field? And naturally, he said really hard. So that's part of the thing, too. Campbell is ready enough to get on the field some. Cheeks is kind of almost there. So, yeah, it'd be good to see them play more. But the other 2 are so good that there is a drop-off. And in coaches being the way they are, it's hard to make that decision. Now, with the rest of the defense, I don't think the guys that start up front that there's a tremendous drop-off to the guys that are in the next wave. I think in the secondary, especially now at safety, as Will Hardy gets healthier, you've got Biggers, Chapman, Hardy, and Stick Lane back there. And, oh, by the way, Derek Allen's a college graduate, and he's back there as well. He's not playing much, but he figured to be part of the rotation. And, by the way, it's 6 college graduates.
Yeah, it's a lot of experience, man.
And a lot of other old. They have a lot of legal drinking age guys on defense. So guys that have blown past it, guys that would be voting for the second time if there was an election right now. So they have a lot of old guys, OGs right over there, old heads. So they have a lot of dudes at safety. And I think now with the emergence of Armani Chapman, which I think was enormously big for this team, because it was taking him some time. He was dealing with coming off the surgery, didn't do a whole lot in the spring, had a so-so off season, and got a lot of reps in fall camp. But, it was taking him time to fit in. He was a Hokie for 5 years. He'd take him he started 25 games there, played in 49. He played a lot of football for a program that does not like North Carolina, and North Carolina does not like.
No, not at all.
And one of the weird dynamics about the portal is sometimes when you have guys that transfer this close to fan base emotional heartstrings, it's a little bit of a transition. And it was for him. But that pick and the way he played and the life that he helped give that defense and the gravitas he gave them in the secondary was, I think, as important as anything else that happened Saturday in that game. I think that's equally as important as what Nate McCollum did, in the sense that he just bolstered the wide receiver room. They had talent there, and they have great tight ends. They were going to be able to move the ball some if they just were a little bit more vertical like they were. But they had a sincere concern at one of those corner spots. So what this does, this allows Huzzy, even though he's a natural corner, he's by far their best option at star. It allows him to basically be the star. And now Marcus Allen has a dude that's now played 50 college games on the other corner with him out there. And that makes an old defense even older, wiser, more experienced, and cagier. So that was a huge development for this team. So there's depth everywhere. Linebacker, in 2 months, we may talk about, hey, Campbell and Cheeks have played 130 snaps of real game time, not Campbell game time, but real game time. And if that's the case, they're going to be a lot more experienced. They will have seen a lot of stuff on film, so they can fix a lot of things. And if something happens later in the year and they're pressed into extended duty, they'll be far more ready for that then than they are right now.
Yeah, I think the defense is in a good position. I do agree with you with the emergence of Chapman. I thought that was really positive. You saw his confidence grow throughout the game too. I knew we even spoke about it in 3 things, how he even mentioned in his post-game press conference he was a little bit nervous going into that game. But it seemed like once he got that pick especially, confidence grew, and he had a really impressive game. Still some things that he can improve on, as you'd expect from a guy who hasn't played a ton of football this year, but really positive.
3 PBUs, 5 tackles. Mm-hmm. He wasn't just the pick, and the pick was the receiver ran the wrong route.
Yeah, it was about the easiest pick as you could have.
And the pick happened because I think Des Evans was about to pulverize the quarterback, so he had to just let go.
Yep.
And Chapman was the benefactor, but hey, being in the right place at the right time is a part of playing defense.
100%.
That's what turnovers are about sometimes. So credit him for that. And I thought the team really responded. That was the sequence that Mac talked about. He went over to the offense. You guys got to take advantage. We got to get some points here and start to pull this game away. When he walked over there, Corey Gaynor and Drake May were making that very clear to the team. So Mac's like, okay, player-led group, I don't have to say anything. They did get a field goal. He goes over to the defense, kind of say the same thing to them, and Cedric Grace took care of it. Mac's like, hey, I can go sit in the stands now. Mm-hmm. The experience, the smarts of this defense, the college graduate aspect, the fact that when they started fall camp, there were 14 guys in the projected defensive rotation that had played at least 1,000 snaps in college, 17 guys that had played at least 700 snaps in college. That cannot be overstated. And we're seeing signs of that by the bend and don't break. And by my favorite stat right now, 5 sudden change situations, they've given up 2 field goals after the 4 interceptions and the onside kick. And one of the Minnesota interceptions, they started at the Carolina 16. Last year, 2 plays, touchdown. They're blowing up. So 2 field goals and 5 sudden change situations. That's maturity, that's knowledge, that's experience. And when that happens, you allow your talent to take over more. Mm-hmm. Talent stymied, individually stymied when guys aren't confident, when guys aren't as smart as they need to be, when, we talked in the preseason about reacting instead of thinking, being better in pre-snap so you're quicker to stuff, right? We're seeing all that play out. They're giving up some yards and they've given up some gashes, but the objective is to keep teams out of the end zone. And right now they're giving up 16.5 fewer points a game than they were the first 3 games a year ago, and they played significantly better competition through these first 3 than last year through the first 3.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Staying on that, North Carolina right now ranked number 93rd nationally in total defense, 382.7 yards per game, but ranked number 57 in scored in defense. So a pretty big discrepancy there. Why is that? What's that discrepancy about, AJ?
Blowing up, keeping guys out of the end zone. And I also think some of the yardage is a little skewed because South Carolina got a lot of yardage because Carolina was keeping everything in front late in that game. And so when you only have 3-game sample size, a big chunk here or there is going to skew the numbers a little bit. Like the scoring, they're giving up 21.8 something points a game right now, but if they don't go to overtime, if Brian Coe kicks that field goal and at the end of regulation, they don't go in overtime, that's 7 fewer points they will have allowed. So in 3 games, that's what, 3.3 points or 2.3 points. So they would be giving up 19.5 points a game right now in that range, 19 points a game, which if that's the case the rest of the year, they're going to win a ton of football games.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's part of the yardage thing, but also they have had sequences even the other game, the other day against Minnesota, that were they're a little soft on coverage. They give up some of the under stuff. They've had some struggles with containment at times. So that's why you and I called it a C+ performance.
Yeah, there's a lot of improvement.
They won convincingly, and there's so much to fix. This club ceiling, maybe a year ago it was here, which is pretty damn good. I think right now it's up here, and who knows if they get a little bit healthier, if they're more vertical, and Kobe Paysour quickly adapts to playing wide on the outside. Copenhagen gets the hoof off soon, and they get healthier at guard because they kind of struggled with the inside runs because they were banged up in the middle of the offensive line last week. Then maybe the ceiling is out of the screen, out of the picture here. They have a chance to be very good. This has a chance to be the best team the school's produced since Mac's last team the first time. All the markings are there, but there's a lot still to clean up. So sometimes the expectation would be, especially in basketball, for the Roy Williams people out there that watched him do his thing for a long time, they'll get better in all those areas. We don't know yet in football. I would think that a Mac Brown coach team with the staff he calls the best he's ever assembled, that should be the case. And if you can get better as the season goes on, still pick up wins, and by the way, they have a combined margin of 62-30 over an SEC and a Big Ten team, and that SEC team played Georgia tough the other day.
Yeah,
that tells me that the ceiling, the potential of this team is significant. And they just added a couple of huge parts the other day in game 3.
I know.
So what you saw the first 2 weeks didn't have Chapman. He played 2 snaps. And McCollum played 9 against App State. So Saturday against Minnesota was essentially his first game. So they added parts. And they're going to get Cavazos, and who knows what else they're going to get.
Yeah, no, they're in a good place right now. Relatively favorable schedule too, leading up to the last 3 weeks of the season. Some tough tests along the way. Don't get it twisted. And Pittsburgh will be a tough test this weekend, no matter what their record says right now. But yeah, Miami Syracuse as well. Syracuse pretty good right now. But look at some of those games being at home. Got to feel pretty good about that.
They get Syracuse a week after they host Clemson. And I'll tell you right now, I will speak on behalf of all Syracuse fans out there, even though I am not one and don't know many. Syracuse fan should be furious at the ACC. Coming up after the game with Army this week, Syracuse has Clemson at home, at North Carolina, at Florida State.
Ooh, that's a gauntlet. Kind of sounds like Carolina's.
And this isn't something that just fell into the cycle here because they just got rid of the divisions, so it's a new schedule. Louisville doesn't play Clemson, doesn't play FSU, doesn't play North Carolina. Now, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, Syracuse fan has every right in the world to complain. If anybody complains about scheduling, it should be Syracuse fan.
Yeah.
And Louisville fan, sit this one out.
Yeah, they ain't got much to say.
The ACC didn't do them any favors at all.
No, didn't do Carolina any favors at the end of the season.
And they're a good team. So Carolina gets them a week after they host Clemson's, and then a week before they go to Florida State. It's kind of weird to think a team that by then could be in the top 14, 13 could be a trap game, but it could be for Syracuse.
Oh, of course. It definitely could be. And before we move on to the offense, AJ, we're going to talk about them for a second. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor again on this, and that is Underdog Fantasy. We're super excited to be partnering with Underdog Fantasy. And just so you guys know, the reason we say it all the time, but the reason we decided to partner with them, a big factor, is because of the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. And they've got a ton of things to offer, including their pick'em game. And in this game, you can pick whether your favorite players have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. It's so easy to play. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 stats of your favorite players, whoever those guys may be, and choose whether they go higher or lower. And you can also 20x your money by going just 5 for 5. They also have a Best Ball Mania game. If you think you know football, this is the game for you. This year's Best Ball Mania has $15 million in total prizes. Repeat that, $15 million, a lot of money. The winner taking home $3 million in prize money. That's a lot of money, AJ. Again, I say it every episode. Would not mind $3 million in my pocket off playing a little bit of a fantasy football game. That to me sounds like a heck of a deal right there. So sign up today, promo code HEAL, HEEL, and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Great deal when you sign up right there. Deposit doubled up to $100. Just check them out at underdogfantasy.com. Also look for them in the App Store, and don't forget to register with that promo code HEAL to get that first deposit, doubled up to $100. Must be 18 plus, present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org. Link is in the description below to head on over to underdogfantasy.com. And again, check them out in the App Store as well. Big thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this show, and excited to be continued to partner with them throughout the rest of the season. All right, AJ, let's talk a little offense. You do have a little bit of offensive things we want to talk about, and talking about a Matt quote from Monday to kind of lead this one off. He said, offensively, we were good overall, but have a ton of room for improvement. Kind of sounds like what we talked about in the Three Things show after the game. You know, you got the McCollum effect coming in, have a really, really positive impact, and essentially his first time healthy and playing a ton of snaps for North Carolina. So that's a big positive. Drake becoming Drake again is also something that I think people are kind of waking out for. Some uncharacteristic turnovers by him. And I know you've talked a lot about that because it's not just this year. It goes back to kind of after that Wake Forest win as a team, really, and as an offense as a whole. Drake maybe hasn't hit the heights that he hit early on last season, probably a few factors in that, but still 3-0 and playing some good football. If he cuts down on some of those careless interceptions, you're going to see a lot more, positive play from him. And, I think the offensive line run blocking up the middle hasn't been great, wasn't great against Minnesota compared to what they were able to do against App State and even South Carolina with the game that British Brooks has. So again, the theme I think for this team right now is they're 3-0, but there's still a lot of room for improvement on both sides of the ball, and even particularly on offense. So, thoughts on where the offense is right now, AJ, because again, there's some steps that they can take.
Chip has been feeling things out, and it takes time sometimes. Remember, there's no exhibition game, and he was waiting for some parts to show up.
Yeah,
they knew they were going to have, so that had something to do with it. One of the parts is there now. The other part likely won't be there at all this year, and that would certainly change things. But I like what they have. I don't know if Blackwell will be available this weekend. If it was a concussion, it's unlikely he'll play.
That's what it looked like.
So Andre Green is going to have an opportunity handed to him to really kind of take that next step. He's played 56 snaps this year. He's in the 18 snaps a game kind of range, 18, 19 a game, but he's only been targeted 3 times, once a game. So a guy with his skills and his potential playing 18, 19 snaps, and the other day in an offense that was chucking it a lot, quarterback threw 40 times, he only got targeted once. He needs to get open more. So people ask, well, what's wrong with him? Why aren't they playing him more? Well, he was a little banged up last year, came in the summer, was learning the offense. The offense changed some. Some of the mindset of how you approach things, instead of finding grass, maybe there's a little bit more design now than under Longo. And he's a guy that's just on a different course. Every football player has their own path, their own timetable. And just because a guy isn't matching the timetable that fans expect doesn't mean that he's underachieving, doesn't mean he's a bust or anything like that. I think Andre is going to be a really good player, but he needs that light to go on moment. We thought maybe he had one against Oregon in the bowl game. And when I asked Drake about him yesterday, he brought up that catch against Oregon. And I asked him, based on something Mac said on Monday, when Green had his one target on Saturday against Minnesota was a ball that he almost made a great catch on. It wasn't the best thrown pass. And Max said, look, if he makes that catch, that's a breakout play. He'll break out. And I thought was interesting, Drake said that Andre texted him Saturday night and said, I need to make that catch. When you throw me that ball, I need to catch it. So in his process, and remember, there's 85 guys on scholarship, so there's 85 processes. In his specific process, that's a great moment. That's a film moment where you learn. Instead of getting down on yourself, you're learning to get better. And we talk human nature all the time. I think that he's been battling some human nature. So he has an opportunity now, especially if Blackwell doesn't play. And we'll see how Kobe Paysour is in his second game, getting the majority of his reps out wide instead of slot. I think he had 13% of his snaps at slot Saturday. He was at 100% the first two games, basically.
Yeah.
So we'll see how he adapts. I also think the fact that Chip saw how stressed Minnesota's defense was going vertical. In the first two games, 16 of Drake's 62 pass attempts were 10 yards or more downfield. Saturday against Minnesota, 16 of his 40 pass attempts were 10 yards or more downfield. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was there. And they didn't say it was a concerted effort, but I think there was a concerted effort to go vertical more, to have him throw more Ps. And he was doing that. That's what they need to be. Mm-hmm. That's what they need to be, because the running game is always going to be there. We said on this show last week, Omarion had a great game against App State, but he was 16 carries, 37 yards against South Carolina. Well, in two games against Power Fives, Omarion is 29 carries for 83 yards. So that's not always going to be there, but Drake's arm is.
Yeah.
And receivers that can get open is. They have more guys than just Nate. Trust me. JJ Jones can run that post and get open, and he's a sure-handed guy. You had this in your video, and if people haven't watched your highlight video, they got to. It's such awesome stuff because you shoot it from an angle nobody ever sees. And one thing I've noticed about JJ is he's had a couple of posts that he's caught this year. He immediately puts two hands on the ball.
Oh, immediately.
He's not, because he's not trying to dash in the end zone. He's just trying to go as far as he can and don't want to lose the ball.
Immediately. That's a good observation.
And a post, when you're running, a lot of times someone's behind you and they can strip and you don't know they're there. You can only sense so much. And so he's a sure-handed guy, and he's a very smart guy. He's going to dot the I's, cross the T's. So he is someone they can go down the field with. But it's Paysour is, I think, an X factor now. Mm-hmm. If he ends up being as good out wide as he is at slot, then he could kind of do some of the things that Tez was expected to do, and complement Nate really well. And I really think that they could be very good passing every game the rest of the way. And they're going up against a terrific pass defense and excellent coverage guys this weekend. So that'll be a great test. This is a team that also stops the run. So if Pitt stops the run, you got to win on Drake's arm. Mm-hmm. And if I had to pick one or the other, and that's my roster, I'm going to go with the arm every time, because he's the most certain thing that they have on that roster. Him on that side of the ball and Cedric Gray on the other side of the ball are two absolutes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're 100% right.
So they can get a lot better, and that's where they can get a lot better. And by the way, real quickly, the inside runs against Minnesota, Minnesota's really stout up front. They're much better than South Carolina up front. And certainly much better than App up front, but Carolina was a little bit banged up too. They didn't have Adorno, they didn't have Lampkin. Montilus was coming off an injury. He was in a boot after the South Carolina game. I think if Lampkin or Adorno was 100%, Montilus may not even have played.
Might be
so
right.
They were a little bit banged up, and that affected some of their inside runs. They're going to get challenged there again this weekend. And you and I were pretty high on the inside runs the first two games. We'll know a lot more about that after Saturday night.
Yeah. And real quickly, just to speak on the vertical passing too, because you had me thinking when you mentioned the video I posted, talking about the guys that caught balls deep. Nate McCullum, touchdown. JJ Jones, Kamar Morales, Gavin Blackwell, Andre Green targeted. They've got some guys, and it showed in that game. Because we were talking about it earlier, okay, Tez Walker's out. Who's the deep threat? It seems like there's, and I think maybe they're still waiting for maybe one guy to really, really emerge as that go-to guy. But when you can spread it out and take advantage of the deep ball with multiple different guys, to me, that's an even more positive. And that's what we saw against Minnesota. I just want to throw that in there as well.
Well, when you're running two tight ends, if you got McCullum at slot, and then you got Nesbitt and Morales, who are both excellent route runners, and you line up, you line them both split where they're essentially in slot, right? And you've got McCollum. You've got to concentrate so much on the middle of the field that you're going to allow Kobe to get in some one-on-one situations. So we're going to learn a lot about Kobe Paysour as receiver. I think Kobe's a fantastic slot.
No, he's really good. Yeah,
and he's had a lot of production there, but he only had one target in the game on Saturday. And he played 53 snaps or whatever it was. So he's learning. Got a lot on film, but he's so talented, and he understands receiver. And Drake actually said yesterday that Kobe played on the outside in high school, and set a bunch of records at Kings Mountain. So maybe it's just part of it was just the targets went elsewhere.
Yeah.
We'll see. But if Kobe ends up being the kind of guy that I think he can be out wide, and he did spend a lot of time working outside in fall camp, if he ends up being that guy, then I do think you're going to see a lethal passing game. It's something that's going to take time. It's going to get better as the season goes on, as it should. But I think that bodes well. You're 3-0, and you're still trying to figure things out offensively. Yeah. And your defense is 93rd and giving up yardage, but they've shown the machismo that you want when they need to show it.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of really good signs, and I think some of the good signs are the stuff that they haven't done well yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are okay signs because they're winning, and they're going to get better at those areas. Every area that they haven't been as good as they want are all fixable. They have answers. They have solutions to every problem on that roster and in that coaching staff.
Yeah.
So that's why it's going to be interesting to see the parts sort of come together as they march forward through the season.
Yep. And they're marching to Pittsburgh this weekend against the Panthers, 8 p.m. kickoff in the Steel City. Let's go ahead and talk about that one, AJ, and preview the Panthers a little bit. Just looking at their results coming into this game, 1-2, win over Wofford in the first game, and then losses to Cincy and West Virginia. Only scored a combined 27 points. Both of those losses, 21 against Cincinnati and 6 against West Virginia last weekend in Morgantown backyard brawl. Quarterback, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. Phil Jurkovec is their starting quarterback. Probably remember him from his time at Notre Dame and also BC in particular. Carolina faced him up there a couple years ago. I believe that was a COVID year, right, AJ? Wasn't that an empty stadium for that one?
There was
Pick six, Trey Morrison to kind of wrap that one up.
There was a security guy in the end zone, if you're in the press box, looking to the left, and he was sitting next to a bunch of cardboard cutouts. And then I saw another dude walking on the other side of the stadium at some point. Otherwise, there was nobody in the stands.
Yeah.
So a security guy who sat and watched the game, and then I saw some guy walking around. That was it.
What a weird time. Let's just put it that way. Just an interesting time. Feels like it was 20 years ago, but it just wasn't. It was like a few years ago. It's a weird time in the world history, but we'll leave it at that.
Jurkovec was really good that game.
Yeah.
And Carolina had to get that Trey Morrison 2-point conversion pick in return for 2 points to give them the separation in that game because BC was looking to tie it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 26-22 final, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. It was something. I'm pretty sure that's right. It was something like that. Yeah. And so 6-year college football for him. So I'm sure Carolina fans are familiar with him and struggled over the past few years and has struggled early on in his Pittsburgh career. Looking at his stats from the West Virginia game, just not good at all. 8 for 20 passing, 81 yards and 3 interceptions against the Mountaineers. If you just Google Pitt football right now, a lot of articles about Jurkovec and whether he should be the starter, whether Narduzzi should do something different. That's kind of where this offense and almost where this team is at right now, which is not necessarily where you want to be.
We posted Pat Narduzzi's transcript of his Monday presser, and almost all of it's about quarterback.
Oh, yeah, almost all the articles.
Jim Hammett, the Pittsburgh site in the Rivals.com network, which is what we're a part of, PantherLair.com, Jim Hammett wrote a column Sunday night about the QB situation and sort of taking Narduzzi to task, saying, look, you've made switches in all these other positions in which the starter wasn't getting the job done. Why haven't you done it at quarterback? And Narduzzi's response is essentially, that's not how we do it. Well, why not? I mean, Jurkovec
it's not really an answer.
They played 2 Power 5 teams, and he's completed 34.6% of his passes.
I know.
So Carolina needs to prepare for whoever else is on the roster as best they can, because Narduzzi's a really competitive dude. He's a glass chewing coach, right? And if they're down 14-0, he's got to do something.
Oh, yeah. He's going to have to.
He may end up starting somebody else. He's probably going to roll with Jurkovec once again.
I think so.
Carolina has made struggling quarterbacks look good in the past.
There's some Carolina fans right now that are not liking what you're saying, AJ. I'll put it that way. Like, backup quarterback again that we're not ready for. Oh, this could be a tough day.
I also think that this will be a little bit of you would think that Pitt would get Carolina's attention, right?
You would hope so. Yeah.
But this is a program that has struggled with their own success handling it. And Mac was talking about generating energy. And yesterday, Cedric Gray was asked about Pitt's struggles. He's like, well, they're not as talented as they've been in the past. Like, there's a. Now, Cedric's a mentally tough guy, but if other guys hear that, who knows how they're going to respond? Because again, human nature, right? I do think that this being Pitt, which has maybe been the second best program in this league the last 5 years, and it's on the road, that should get their attention. First ACC game. And I think something that Mac's doing this year, which I really like, he said they're coaching them up on Sundays as if they lost the day before.
Yeah, I remember that quote.
And I guess it's kind of easy in a sense because of what we're talking about. They've left a lot of stuff on the field. They can get a lot better, and he knows that. So to be that team, you can't go up there and stumble. You can't be FSU at BC last Saturday because Pitt's better than BC and Carolina doesn't, maybe not as good as FSU. Tar Heels have less room for error. So if they are FSU in Chestnut Hill and BC and Pitt does what BC did, Carolina will lose this game.
Oh, yeah.
So they got to be mentally ready. And it'll be interesting to see what the crowd is, too. There's supposed to be some weather up there. So
that can play a factor as well.
Crowd. 2 losses. They're all mad at the quarterback. They're mad at Narduzzi. They don't draw that great there to begin with, which is unfortunate. I've said 1,000 times before. I wish that they would have an on-campus stadium and they'd get that thing full and rocking and
no brainer.
Show the history of that program better. But they play in the Steelers Stadium, and you know how it is when college teams play in pro stadiums.
Yeah, it's just. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think you want to have and I do. We've talked about limitations in Pittsburgh on where to build one and on campus, but if you can do it, I think it's a positive because it's just not the same when you're playing in a stadium that's not quote unquote yours. You know what I mean?
If you've been to their campus, you'd realize it's
I know you've
next to impossible to do it.
And I get it, especially in a city like that. I mean, there's not a ton of room to build a massive football stadium, but maybe interested to see if they do that.
It's not so much the space; it's the topography.
Yeah. Just hilly.
I mean, it's hills, man. That's got to be the most in shape student body in America because they spend half their time walking uphill. And walking downhill can be stressful too.
I can relate based on where I went to school.
When I go there for basketball, I stay right next to campus, and I often will just walk over to the arena, and it's a walk. It's
getting them steps in. Yeah. Get that heart rate up, going uphill the whole time. Probably.
I'm good. I'm good for that.
Yeah, no, I know you are. That's for sure. So I think the only thing going for him in that respect is the big positive in terms of what the crowd could be, weather permitting, is that 8 p.m. kickoff. If you're going to have a decent crowd, it's usually going to be for a kickoff like that. So we'll see. It won't be sold out, but it could be a decent crowd, or maybe it won't be.
And it's a good team going in there, a recognizable team, and it's a must-win game for Pitt. So
big game.
You know, I'm trying to put myself in the frame of mind as a fan. I may not be happy with the quarterback situation. I may not be happy with the start, but all their goals are still intact.
Yeah,
pretty much.
No ACC.
I don't know how much they had a goal of CFP, but winning the ACC is still intact because they're 0-0 in the ACC, same record as Carolina. So this is a huge game, and this is a club that's got a lot of dudes. They may have as many NFL guys in their roster as North Carolina does. So. And they have beaten Carolina up there the last couple times Carolina's gone up there. So any North Carolina fan that expects a lopsided win, you're fooling yourself. They may win, but they also may not score a whole lot. Maybe another one of these moderate scoring games for the Tar Heels, which has kind of been the norm going back to late last season.
Yeah, and staying on that, just to talk about Pitt a little bit more, ranked number 5 nationally in total defense. You heard that right. Number 5 right now in total defense, allowing just 4.24 yards per play and just 236 yards per game. So it's a good defense they're going up to face. And it's, again, an offense that is struggling a little bit to find an identity and trying to figure out who's going to be the guy at quarterback. So let's talk about keys to victory in this one, AJ. I've got 3 right here, all lists, and I'll kick it to you. I think eliminating the silly turnovers is number 1 for me, because to me, that's been a theme for the Tar Heels this year. Got to eliminate some of those. And again, interceptions are going to happen. I think Drake May can cut down on them. But when you look at some of the interceptions he's had this year, I think especially that second one against Minnesota, that's extremely avoidable. And he'll tell you that. I mean, it's not me just speaking out of tongue right here. He will tell you that, even the first one in some ways. So I think if you can eliminate some of those silly turnovers, stop putting your defense in these kind of weird positions that we talked about early on in this show, when you're having to kind of make stops on your own side of the field. It's great that the defense is doing that. But again, eliminate some of those silly turnovers and don't put them in positions to have to do that, and you're going to find even more success. So that's number one for me, especially against an offense that's struggling. Don't give them any, easy possessions where they're maybe starting on, Carolina's 20 instead of having to march down the field, which they've struggled to do. Second for me, establish that run game early. I think that's another thing that's this big for this team. I think it's going to be tough against this Pittsburgh defense, but I do think there are some ways that Carolina can exploit that. And we've seen Pittsburgh, run the ball a good amount with some of the struggles that they've had. And I think we've seen Carolina as well have some success running the ball and maybe not have some success, especially last week. You mentioned some O-line injuries. Get healthy down there again, establish some kind of running game between Brooks and Hampton, and that'll open up the vertical passing game as well. So I think that would be big. And again, forced turnovers on defense is the last one for me, AJ. 3 interceptions for Jurkovec in the last game. In West Virginia. It's an offense that has turned the ball over. It's an offense that hasn't had a lot of success, and it's a Carolina defense that has forced turnovers this year early on. So if you can go up there and force some turnovers as well and not turn the ball over yourself, I think you're going to find yourself in a good position against an offense that's really, really struggling so far. So those are my 3 keys to victory for the Tar Heels. I'll kick it to you, AJ. Any keys to victory besides those that you may have?
You hit it, the first couple. Make Jurkovec earn it.
Yeah.
Don't give him short fields. So turnovers give you short fields. Give the opponent short fields. And on the other end, the 1 touchdown drive Minnesota had, Carolina had 2 pass interferences on it.
Yeah.
And the second one would have forced Minnesota to make a decision, kick a field goal, or go for 4th and long. So it kept the drive alive and they got a touchdown. So make Jurkovec earn it by not giving him short fields, and then don't helping drives stay alive by committing penalties, especially at the wrong time. Those are the 2 biggest keys, in my opinion. The third biggest key is Drake's just got to be Drake.
Mm-hmm.
Because even whether they establish the run or not, if he hits on enough stuff, and the Tar Heels are able to make Jurkovec play in character, recent character, then cross goal line several times, they're going to be in good shape. If Carolina can score 3 touchdowns, they're going to be in good shape in this game. If they score 4 touchdowns, they're going to be in great shape in this game.
Yeah.
And I think their best path to doing that is just Drake being a stud. That's it. And guys getting open to help him be a stud. So I think that's what it is. You got to make Jurkovec beat. You got to make him earn it. Don't make him beat you because they get turnover at the 9 and then they throw a fade and they score and they got an easy possession there, a 9-yard touchdown drive. That's brutal. Make him go 75 yards. Make him go 70 after a punt or 80 after a punt. See if he can do that. And if he does, he does. But you can't give him anything there. Don't give him that field position, and don't help them out with pass interferences or personal fouls or face mask or anything like that. Play clean. Mm-hmm. Play clean defense. If you get beat on a snap, but play clean. Don't tack on yardage. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it will come down to. I believe this Carolina team is going to get better every week. And I really am looking forward to seeing how they got better this week from last week. Because I think the win over Minnesota and the way they closed them out, I think that was a little bit of a launching point into what they could be. Well, we'll see if it really was. Is that just a great close to a game, or was that truly a launching point into the next level of what they're going to be as a team? Yeah. We'll find out Saturday night.
Yeah, we definitely will. And it's a good opportunity. Again, you're facing a very beatable Pittsburgh team, not a vintage Pittsburgh team that we've seen over the past few years. It's a good opportunity for North Carolina. And you mentioned if they're going to take that next step, it's a game you can't lose. You can't lose this game because, again, this is not a vintage Pittsburgh team. You have to go up there, take care of business. And I think Carolina can definitely do that. So we'll see what happens. I sent my staff picks in this morning, AJ, about a couple hours. Yeah, a little bit earlier today. I'm saying 34-24, and I'm basing this on a couple different things. I think Pitt's going to score to struggle. That would be a high for them against P5 opponents this year. 24 points would be. At home, I could see that potentially happening. And I'm basing that 34 for Carolina because that's just kind of the range they've been in. You go low 30s with this Carolina football team, especially this year, you're feeling pretty good about that. They scored 31 in 2 games, and then obviously I was at 40 against App State, and that went to double overtime. So they like that 30 to 40 range. So that I'm thinking a 10-point victory for Carolina. I'm always wrong on these staff picks in terms of getting the score right. I don't know if I've ever gotten a score right, to be completely honest with you. But that's my prediction. I think Carolina wins this one. And I kind of based it on, if you're looking at what Carolina's done this year and you're looking what Pitt's done both through 3 games. There's no way you can predict Pitt to win this game. You just can't. That's my opinion. I'm picking Carolina by 10 in this one. What do you got, AJ?
Well, if you factor in the pride of the Pitt program, Narduzzi's ability to get his guys ready, the fact that they are excellent defensively, and the fact that they are going to be playing in desperation mode and are probably better than what you've seen offensively, and a quarterback who has had big games in the past.
Yeah, he is big moments.
Maybe there's something that's still there. Then, yeah, I can envision Pitt winning this game. There's no doubt about it. I don't. It's
also a place Carolina struggles at. They have struggled in Pittsburgh. They've won games, but they have struggled.
They didn't for a while, but they have under Mack up there, and I think part of that's just because Pitt's been better. I mean, they had Pickett the last couple of times Carolina went up there, and he was all. And then Carolina got hit in that monsoon in overtime. Yeah. 2 years ago, and that didn't help. But and Tar Heels showed some grit that night, fighting back in that game. I think it's gonna be lower scoring. I did a 5 questions thing we did an exchange with the Pitt site, and I believe I had UNC winning 24-13.
Okay, I like that. So I could see that. That makes sense for a few.
I don't know. I haven't done my staff pick for art. That'll be the official one, but I think you're going to see some big plays, some workman-like stuff, some grind it out, and you might see a lot of punts in this game.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that because if that's how it plays out, that's how it plays out. And I think this team winning a gritty game on the road would be really good for them. Of course, they go in there and win 45-10, then that might say something more about Pitt than it does about North Carolina, to be honest with you. But we'd have to see how that plays out. They haven't been 4-0 since 1997.
I guess you are right, aren't you?
Yeah, and they've only been 4-0 once since 1983 or something.
It was hard.
They had that period there. They had that period in the early 80s where they were getting off the great starts for a while. The 80 and 81 teams finished in the top 10. 82 was like 6-0 or something, and they lost. And 83, I think, started out like 5-0, 6-0, something like that. I have to go back and look, but only once since 83. It's 40 years they've had one 4-0 start.
It's crazy.
So this it would be significant if they get a win up there.
Big opportunity. It really is.
And I think that as this season goes on, we may be talking about what they're doing in comparison to Mac's last 2 teams and in comparison to the early 80s when they were outstanding and they were turning out crap loads of NFL guys.
Yeah.
I think this club is heading that direction, should be heading that direction, and is heading that direction.
Agreed. We'll see what happens on Saturday night in Pittsburgh. Carolina can improve to 4-0 on the year and open ACC play 1-0 against the Panthers. That's going to do it for us, AJ. We're going to go ahead and wrap this show up. I think this one might be a little bit longer than last week. So I want to say week 1 and 2 I think week 1 would have been the longest one we did. Week 2, pretty long. I think last week is a little bit shorter. I think this one might be up there again, which is good because it's a big time matchup. A lot of things to talk about, as there always is. So we're going to go ahead and get on out of here. Again, thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this show. AJ will be in Pittsburgh. We will be back. We will be back for 3 things as well, but it will be virtual this time. First virtual one of the season. So looking forward to talking. Are you
prepared for a late night 3 thing?
Oh, it's going to be a late night 3 things, AJ. I saw, I'm not going to lie.
It'll be after midnight. Midnight.
Oh, will it ever be after midnight? I'm not going to lie. When I saw the 8 p.m. kickoff, I wasn't super happy about that. As a media, it's different, right? I think as a fan, you're like, oh, nice 8 p.m. kickoff, evening game, kind of do whatever I want throughout my day. But as a media perspective, I'm like, okay, so that means probably getting to sleep about 2 a.m. That's what I have to factor that in. You're probably not going to sleep that evening. And that's,
I have a 5:30 flight Sunday morning.
So you're definitely not sleeping.
I'll work a few hours and then Uber to the airport. So
yeah, the 8 p.m. kickoffs are brutal. Give me a noon game any day of the week. Fans will completely.
Yeah, I'll have to Uber back to my. I'm up taking my luggage. I have to Uber back to my hotel, get my luggage, and then Uber to the airport. So I've done that before. When they played on Thursdays, I would fly up and fly back.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, do that for basketball a lot too.
Luggage.
I know. But
I just have my game bag over my shoulder. I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Because we'd have basketball the next day, and I've gone through TSA in the Pittsburgh airport all by myself before. Like nobody else. I got 95 guys staring at me, so I better not screw up. Otherwise I'll never fly again, right?
Yeah. And that is exactly why you should become a premium subscriber at TarHeelIllustrated.com for just $8.33 a month. Not only the dedication AJ's showing right now, the late nights, the traveling, but also got to pay for those Ubers, got to pay for those flights, man. It's not free out here. It's not free.
I need to get TSA. I keep forgetting to get
Cost of
TSA
living crisis.
pre-check.
Come on, guys. Help us out a little bit.
Pre-check.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. That would be good. That would help you out a big time. But again, that's why you should be a subscriber. Gives back a little bit. Again, the more subscribers we have, the more revenue we can bring in as a website and as an organization, the more content we can give you guys. Everybody wins.
I got to pay you guys more.
Yeah, pay us more too. Come on, help us out, guys. Help us out, man. We put a lot of work in over here, trying to get a little more money in the pocket for that. So just go subscribe. And again, premium subscription, $8.33 a month, links in the description below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Like the video as well if you think Carolina's going to win, and just like it to help out the algorithm. I don't talk about the algorithm a lot on here because I don't understand it, but I do know if you like the video, for some reason, YouTube promotes it more and gives more exposure, and then more people see it, which obviously helps us out a lot. So go ahead and like the video below. Yep. Hit the notification bell too. We upload a ton this year. If you want to be notified every single time we upload, you can do that by hitting that notification bell on YouTube as well.
We're also almost ready to be monetized on Twitter.
Yeah,
we need more Twitter activity.
Yeah, come over there on Twitter and help us out.
And don't follow us on Twitter. Go to Twitter
Facebook too. Trey's been doing a good job over there with some of his posts over there. So check us out on Facebook. Go like that page as
I have to pay Jacob and Dina more.
Yeah, come on, guys, help us out with the revenue, man.
And Brandon.
Cost of living crisis, AJ.
But not Kevin Roy. I will not pay Kevin Roy more. I refuse to.
If on the off chance I hope Kevin hears this. I don't think he will.
He reads and watches everything that we do.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see if he makes it. This is a test for him. Does he make it this far in the podcast? I'm sure we've lost 90% of our audience already, but can Kevin listen to this one? Interested.
We've made a few Kevin Roy references the last couple of weeks, and he hasn't said anything about it.
Okay, so I think that proves it right there. I don't know if he's heard him, AJ. Maybe he'll hear this one.
Yeah.
We'll have to do the references a little bit earlier in the show, I guess, maybe.
No, too late. We'll that way we'll find out if he actually watches the whole thing or listens.
Yeah,
to the
whole fact thing. That he's gone 0 for 3 on the texts for those references, I think shows that he did not hear it. I think that's 100% guaranteed fact. So maybe you'll hear this one. We'll see what happens.
If you guys think I should give Kevin Roy a raise or Jacob Turner a raise, let us know on Twitter.
Yeah, let us know, man. Help me out,
Jacob.
These guys.
And if you want to throw Dina in there, everyone will pick Dina. So I don't want to do that. Everyone, Dina deserves. She's
of course,
so sweet.
Yeah. Dina's the fan favorite. Everybody
Dina will get it. Now this is Jacob Turner versus Kevin Roy. Who deserves a raise more?
Come on, guys. Team Jacob over here. Sound like I'm referencing Twilight over here. You follow me on Twitter too.
If we call him Team Roy, people are going to go with that because they're going to think it's actually Roy.
True, that's not fair. We got to go Team Kevin, Team Jacob because you're right. Team Roy, they're going to be that's going to be the one that takes the cake for sure. Come on, help me out, guys. Get involved on Twitter. Also reach out to me at Jacob Turner THI, at Jacob Turner Tar Heel Illustrated THI. Makes sense. Go over and follow me on Twitter as well. Be much appreciated. But let's go ahead and get out of here, AJ. We got more stuff to do. I know you got a busy schedule today, as do I. So appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for the ACC football preview show as well. That'll be coming out on Thursday. Appreciate y'all watching. See you on the next one. Thanks.